The Wild West, a land where gunslingers dueled at high noon, where saloon doors swung open every 5 minutes before another shootout exploded into chaos, where every cowboy carried a revolver and every town had a body count. At least, that's the version Hollywood sold us. But what if the real Wild West was something stranger? What if the Wild West was often quieter, more bureaucratic, more regulated, and in many places less violent than modern American cities? Tonight, we separate myth from reality, and the truth is far more interesting than the legend. The myth of the violent Wild West didn't begin with Hollywood. It began while the West was still alive. In the late 1800s, cheap dime novels turned out sensational stories about legendary gunfighters like Wyatt Earp and Wild Bill Hickok. Most of these stories were wildly exaggerated. Shootouts became larger, outlaws became superhuman, lawmen became mythical heroes. Then came the movies. Westerns became one of the most profitable genres in American history, and filmmakers quickly learned something important. Watching someone quietly file land paperwork for 20 minutes is not exciting. Watching two men draw revolvers in slow motion, that sells tickets. Over time, audiences stopped seeing Westerns as fantasy and started seeing them as history. The real frontier was not endless gunfights. It was mostly labor, exhausting labor. Cowboys spent far more time herding cattle, repairing fences, fighting weather, and cleaning manure than engaging in dramatic standoffs. Most settlers were farmers, railroad workers, blacksmiths, shopkeepers, miners, and families trying to survive harsh conditions. The biggest killers in the West were often disease, exposure, industrial accidents, starvation, bad water, not quick-draw revolvers. And surprisingly, many frontier towns had stricter gun laws than some modern cities. In towns like Dodge City and Tombstone, visitors were frequently required to surrender their weapons upon entering town. That's right, one of the most iconic gunfighter towns in American history often banned carrying guns inside town limits. Now, to be fair, the West was absolutely dangerous, just not in the way movies portray. Violence tended to erupt in specific places: mining boom towns, railroad camps, cattle towns during peak seasons, and many of these places were overwhelmingly male populations, filled with gambling, alcohol, and instability. But historians studying actual homicide records found something surprising. Many famous frontier towns averaged fewer murders per year than people imagine. In some years, towns like Dodge City had only a handful of killings total. The legendary gunfight at the Corral, it lasted less than a minute. The myth grew larger than the event itself. Modern historians argue that tiny population sizes distorted statistics. A town with one murder and only a few hundred residents could appear more violent on paper than a major modern city. The result? An image of frontier America as permanent chaos, when reality was usually long stretches of boredom, interrupted by occasional bursts of violence. Hollywood often portrays the frontier as lawless, but settlers desperately wanted order. Businesses needed stability. Railroads needed security. Families needed predictability. So Western towns rapidly built systems of control: sheriffs, courts, local ordinances, property laws, gun restrictions. Many frontier citizens weren't trying to preserve chaos, they were trying to escape it. Ironically, the real Wild West was often a story about creating civilization as fast as possible. And when violence did happen, communities frequently reacted aggressively against it, because shootouts were bad for business. The biggest surprise about the Wild West might be how ordinary much of it was. Movies focused on gunfighters because they were dramatic. But most Western lives revolved around routine survival. Laundry, farming, bookkeeping, trading, repair work, church services, schoolhouses. And while legends celebrate lone gunslingers, many actual frontier residents viewed violent men as unstable liabilities. There were famous outlaws, there were brutal conflicts, and there were horrifying wars against Native American tribes that movies often simplified or ignored entirely. But the everyday reality of Western expansion was not constant cinematic action. It was work, relentless work. So why does the myth still exist? Because myths are powerful. The Wild West became America's national legend, a place where individuals shaped destiny with grit and a revolver. It was dramatic, simple, easy to sell, and over generations, fiction slowly replaced memory. But the real West is more fascinating than the fantasy, because it wasn't a non-stop action movie. It was a collision between civilization and wilderness, order and chaos, opportunity and brutality. And beneath the legends and gunsmoke were ordinary people trying to build lives in an unforgiving world. The Wild West wasn't fake, it just wasn't Hollywood. So if you showed up in the Wild West expecting constant high-noon duels, you'd probably be disappointed. Most days, you wouldn't see a dramatic shootout. You'd see a guy arguing with a mule. And if you did witness violence, it was usually less Hollywood showdown and more two men immediately regret their life choices while everyone else watches like it's an awkward public incident. In fact, time traveling to the Old West, with all your modern expectations, would mostly get you one of three outcomes. You become a farmer, you become a clerk, or you become extremely tired by 9:30 a.m. Because the real Wild West wasn't a gunfight every street corner. It was a lot of dust, a lot of work, and a surprising number of people trying to convince you that their potatoes are premium grade, which, historically speaking, might be the most dangerous claim of all. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more videos just like this.